Hi, my name is Khodzhaev and this is How to Despill. First of all, let's define what Despill is. Despill is an operation in compositing that removes reflection of a green or a blue screen, otherwise known as spill, from hero elements. Today I'd like to show you how to do it with one of my tools. Despill TK is working based on a weighted average algorithm. What it means is that screen color, in our case that would be green, is replaced with weighted average of two other channels, in our case that would be red and blue. Trick is that it's only happening in areas where a green component is bigger than average of two other channels. Mathematically it could be represented with the following expression. So if green is more than average of red and blue, then green equals to average of red and blue. Let's see how it could be applied to our image. This is a simple expression that does average Despill. And this is my node. And as I'm toggling between them, you can see that they both are doing exactly the same thing, and they both out of the gate are doing a pretty decent job at killing green screen. There's still a little bit of green left under his chin on his neck. I can see a little bit in his hair. I don't know if it's visible in the final image. And there's a little bit in the eye. We can probably improve that by tweaking parameters. Unfortunately, simple expression doesn't have any parameters to tweak, but luckily for us, my node have plenty of parameters exposed, so you can tweak them and improve your Despill. So let's start with the spill bias. It allows us to change weight in average formula. Let's enable color wheels so we can see what's happening with the color when we shift weights. As we change weights, treated area shifting towards reds or blues. It also becomes a little bit more aggressive and it kills cyans and yellows. So we have to be a little bit careful to make sure that we kill spill, but we still have our original hero plates colors maintained and not overspilled. Watch how color of his shirt and his hair change in these areas where I change weights. I think for this specific shot, values around 0.6, 0.64, maybe 65 is fine. So I'll leave it like that. Another parameter we can play with is a spill threshold. It defines how aggressive treatment is. As I pull it lower, you can see how it becomes more aggressive, and as I pull slider higher, you can see how it becomes less aggressive. It's pretty sensitive treatment, so I limited it to a small values range, but if you feel like smallest value is not doing it for your shot, you can still keep decreasing it. Just be careful to not tweak it too much so it kills all the hero plate colors. In our case, I don't think we need a lot of that, so I'll leave it somewhere here. Next parameter is neutralize. What it allows us to do is neutralizes a color that it's sampling. In some cases, even after Despill have done its work, screen color is still not neutral, or some people prefer to start from a neutral gray and then tint color. So this function is designed specifically to address that. Let's see on a color wheel. Let's say I want this color to be a little bit more neutral and gray. So I have to position that sampling point over a color that I'm not happy with and press sample button. And immediately you can see how it kind of grayed out all the colors here, trying to make sure those colors are gray. Let's move it over here, sample, and you can see how now this color is a little bit grayer. Let's try it over the green screen area. So now you see it's trying to neutralize that color. In this case, I don't really think I'm gonna use this feature, so I'm gonna disable it. And in new version of Despill TK, you have a checkboxes next to some of the sliders, and what they allow us to do, they enable or disable specific features of the node, so you can have only some of them working. Let's speak about tint. Tint is very helpful when you're trying to hide edges of your extraction. It allows us to color screen to a colors that we want. So let's try it with his skin colors, for example. And you see, as I'm sampling a color, it's tinting green screen into the colors that I'm sampling. Next one is saturation. Saturation is pretty aggressive, and I wouldn't recommend playing with that unless this is your last resort and everything you tried is not working. But mask that is applying desaturation to is pretty harsh, and as I would tweak it, you would see how much colors it kills. So I would not recommend it. It was designed for very specific shots, and then in most cases, I would recommend not to touch this parameter. First of all, of course, we need to enable it, and then we can start decreasing it. And as I said, you can see that mask is pretty harsh, that doesn't have like very nice soft fall off, and it's desaturating quite a lot of colors. So you might end up killing a lot of your hero plate colors. And watch here what's happening with the hair. So now we got to the more interesting features. Quite often you can see how people leaving glowing edges around their extraction. And subtract spill is parameter designed to solve exactly that problem. As you can see, immediately as I enable it, it's starting to subtract some color from the spilled areas. And as I tweak parameters, you can see how it's becoming harsher. Idea is to take your screen color, and with value of 1, if your spill suppression is very successful, it will take screen color to 0, to blacks. But it is pretty destructive and harsh treatment. I wouldn't worry too much about losing details around these areas, like his hair, all the fine details. You can see how they disappear. Idea is that we have to balance this with additive key. Additive key would allow us to keep all these details, but when we increase this slider, it allows us to suppress glowing edges. And even though it's destructive, I feel like this treatment is still better than edge extend, and it allows us to keep some nice edge details while suppressing glowing edge. Another parameter we have here is a subtract threshold, and this is again just how aggressive treatment is. And you can see as I'm pulling it higher or lower, it moves areas on the color wheel higher or lower, affecting more or less colors. In this case, I don't think we will use it, so I'll just disable it for now. Next setting we have here is Restore Luma. This parameter helps us maintain original luminance of the plate, and by default it's set to 1, so it's trying to keep plate at exactly same luminance as it was before. So if I will disable a node, you can see how even though saturation and color changing, luminance is staying the same. You not always want it to be like completely restored, so I have a slider that allows you to tweak it to the amount you want it to be restored. And the last one on this tab is a mix. Mix allows us to mix to original plates. This is just regular mix, as it will work in all other nodes. Just in case you want to go back and restore a little bit more of your original colors, even bringing some of the greens back. Sometimes it's necessary. It all depends on a shot, and this parameter allows you to do that. So this is already looking pretty good, but how can we take it even further? Instead of solid gray color or tinted color, we can try using background to mix in the semi-transparent areas like his hair, or sometimes you play this defocus like in these areas, and you can mix in background color instead of desaturated gray or tinted color, and that would produce even better integration for your extraction. So let's see how we can do this. By default, mixing background is disabled, and to enable it, you have to disable this checkbox in here, and then we just need to connect background, and voila, we already have a background mixing going on, and you can see how different areas get a different colors mixed in, and it's all looking very natural and helping. It would help to integrate our extraction. We can tweak some more parameters how background mixing happening in a background influence tab. A lot of it is self-explanatory, so BG blur is just blurring background or keeping it sharp. BG contribution is sort of like a mix, but it's not really a mix. It's like how aggressive background mixing is, and you can see in comparison with mix, I can take it higher than 1, and it's still gonna be more aggressive. I wouldn't really encourage you to use it with the high settings like that because it's starting to look unnatural, and in some cases background shines through the hero plate, which makes it look transparent. I found that for most of my shots, values around 0.3, 0.4 are working quite nice, so I prefer to use it like that. PG threshold is again like aggressiveness of the treatment, and it defines how far towards the core background mixing is happening. It might be hard to see it like that, but you can see, like, watch this area. As I pull it higher, you can see background starting to appear inside of the character. Or if you will watch his face, as I pull it higher, you can see how it goes from his hair towards core. Let me crank up background contribution so you can see how exactly this is happening. Alright, let's restore it to meaningful values. So the next one is a little bit tricky. Not everyone gets that. So sometimes even if you tweak your edge colors and overall edge is looking fine, but sometimes in some areas of your background you have very bright colors where your edge is still looking dark and producing an outline. So for these cases I designed that next feature that allows us to gain background contribution in these specific areas. In order to see what areas affected, I have a display checkbox in here. And while we're here, let's talk about that as well. When you enable display, it allows you to display additional debug views. And what we have here is spill, for example. So you can see spill separately. You can see spill mat as well. So you can see how much spill is happening in your plate. Also, I have background highlight overlay and background highlights mat. So this is showing you what areas of the background would be gained when you play with these parameters. I think background highlights overlay is a little bit more illustrative because it's showing you on top of your hero plates and it allows you to see what areas would be affected. And as you see, there's striped, red striped areas. That is your mask that would be gained when we pull the slider up or down. So now if I will disable display, we're back to our normal view, and I can play with these parameters, and you can see how it brightens specific areas of our background. And again, we have a mix here that mixes up and down all parameters all together. This is just a mix on a background contribution. One thing that you can notice is with pretty high settings, sometimes you get some noise appearing inside your hero elements, and there's two recommendations I can make to help you solve this problem. First one is you always have to denoise your plate. This one is obviously not denoised, and you can see already how much noisier my spill suppression is. And the second recommendation is when I'm doing a spill suppression, I like to split my Despill nodes into two areas, into two different nodes. One node might be slightly more aggressive, and it will be using subtract spill option, for example, and using background influence, and that spill would be affecting only edges of my hero plate. And another one would be only affecting core, and it's definitely not going to be using spill subtract option and would have background influence disabled. That's also help prevent effect of transparency, because if you crank up parameters of background influence too high, you will start seeing background shining through your hero plate, which would render it transparent. Here's an example how I treated this shot with this idea. So you can see I have like a rough key. I haven't really done a good job. It's just to illustrate this concept, and I created a soft edge mask that covers all details, all soft details, like every tip of my hair is covered by this mask. And I split my despills into two different despills. This one is affecting core and this one is affecting edges. And here's how it's working. And you can see inside I have pretty good suppression. If you will watch color on his button or his eyes or his neck, I'm suppressing all the greens quite effectively, and same happening here on his hair and edges of this plate. And you can see there's no green left, and we're also mixing some background colors in it. And finally, we have an advanced tab. Here there's some hidden properties that help only very specific cases, but they were still helpful, so I decided to keep them and just kind of remove them from the main interface and hidden them in this advanced tab so they wouldn't clutter interface and wouldn't confuse users. In order to illustrate how it works, I have to dive inside my node. So Solarize is solarizing a plate, making all the colors to be very bright and saturated. That allows algorithm to detect green spill better. And there's a few different methods how you can do that. They all proven to be useful in some specific cases. It's not always helpful. Sometimes enabling Solarize actually decreases quality of the Despill, so I'd be careful with that. Just play with that and see if it's helping your shot. This treatment is completely non-destructive. What's happening is it solarizes the shot before Despill, and then it restores original color back. So it's completely reversible treatment. It doesn't affect your colors. It's just sometimes it might help you with your Despill. Another option I have here is highlights recovery. That option was helpful when you have clipped plates. In this case, we don't have clipped highlights, so it might be harder to show what exactly it does, but I can illustrate the basic concept. With a clipped highlight, sometimes clipped areas, they become flat white in here. So when you Despill it, it kind of creates this really weird artificial colors. It doesn't really look natural. And you can address it, you can solve that problem by using Luminance key. You just keying specific areas that you're saying need special treatment. So enabling display highlights recovery overlay allows me to see that mask, and when I'm tweaking my Luminance key, I can see what areas would be affected. Now if I enable highlight recovery, I can do some specific custom grade for my highlights, and this basically could be anything. Right now I'm gonna do something very exaggerated just to illustrate concept, but you don't have to do it that harsh. Just play with it and see if it helps your shot. There's few more options in here. Output channels, I think it's off by default. When it's on, it allows you to output some additional channels that you can use later in your comp. So if I create a shuffle, you can see what I'm outputting here is a Despill color. This is basically a spill matte multiplied by background color. And this basically shows you what color you're replacing in your spill areas. And I'm also exporting some masks. Masks are split into red and green channels. And basically what's happening is in red area, you get your basic spill information. And in the green channel, you have that with background contribution. So when I'm tweaking these parameters, you can see this mask is changing, but if I will go to red channel, tweaking this slider wouldn't affect it. So red is a pure spill mask, and green channel is a spill with background contribution in it. So that's basically it for my Despill node. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me or write in the comments for this video.